In order to build a strong business case, you are going to need a strong financial model behind it. This is what I'd like to talk to you about today. So I'd like to discuss the components of a strong business case, including the very important financial model that goes behind it. My name is Danielle Stein Fairhurst. I am a Microsoft MVP. I've written a couple of books about financial modeling, and I'm going to draw some examples from those books during our session today. So this is what I would like to cover with you. Now, I have been building business cases for a very long time, and what I could do today is take you through one of the many financial models that I've built to support a business case. But recently, I have been working with a strategic growth consultancy to support their business case process, and I've been working on the entire process of the business case building. So instead of just focusing on the financial modeling component, what I'd like to do today is to take you through the entire business case process, including the financial model that goes behind it. So the first thing I'd like to do is to talk about defining the business case. So the reason that we need business cases is because companies have various opportunities that they have presented to them, and in order to make decisions, they need a highly structured document, which is called a business case, to make those investments comparable. So it's a really efficient way of standardizing all of these opportunities in order to make those decisions. Some would see it as filling in the blanks, but as we'll see, it's a lot more than that. So what is a business case and what is it not? So is it a template, a Word document, a spreadsheet? Is the entire thing a financial model? It's in fact all of these. So let's set the scene. So let's say you need to put together a business case. So being a good little Excel user, you open up Excel and you start calculating the costs of the business case of the project and start working out the income and make the comparison and in your financial model. That isn't a business case in its entirety. Okay, so you Google, how do I do a business case? And you find some fantastic templates online and you start filling them out. Okay, that might be a good start, but that's not a full business case process. A business case is really an artifact that's the result of a highly structured strategic planning process. And we'll go through some of those parts of that strategic planning process here today. It's basically a contract, or it's a formal internal document between a sponsor and their organization. So it's usually because there is expenditure for a project that's above delegation, so it needs board approval. It's definitely not just a fill in the blanks template completing process. So let's have a look at what the skills that you need in order to build a business case, because it's very unusual for one single person to be able to build the business case on their own. It really requires some quite specialist knowledge. And number one, the process or the strategic analysis that's required. Now that's certainly the thing that I struggle with the most, and I think most Excel users and modelers do as well, because we are quite logical and linear. You know, we like rows and we like columns, we like cells, we like things to fit into those cells, and a strategic planning process doesn't always work like that. We can't just fill in the blanks, although we can try, and I'll show you some ways of doing that. So number one is probably something that you may need some outside help with, or I'll show you how we can perhaps do it together. Number two is the modeling knowledge, of course. So it's being able to put together a financial model that supports that strategic process, and it needs to be very clearly aligned to each of the components of the strategic analysis in the business case document. And lastly is the domain knowledge, so the industry and the technical expertise, and you'll usually find that within the organisation. So this is people who the specialists who understand the project, that understand the things that are important specific to that project. So number 1 and 2, you can probably outsource and get people from outside the organisation. Number 3, you probably need to get people from within the organisation to get that knowledge. So what I really wanted to impress on you in this point is that there are so many different people involved in a business case. The modeler is really the heart of the entire thing, but the modeler will need to liaise with so many different people throughout the process of putting together the business case. So let's talk now about the structure of the business case. I kind of hesitate to call it the business case process, because if you call it a process, it kind of insinuates that there's some sort of a linear continuum, so a step-by-step kind of thing where you do this and then you do this and then you do that, and it's not necessarily like that. What we'll take a look at now, it's really a structure where you need to sort of fill everything in, but it's not going to necessarily be step by step. You'll need to there'll be some iterations. So this is really the different components of what you need to put together in the business case. So what often happens, we find we might be approached by someone who says, "Hey, we've got this idea, we've got this problem, and we found this fantastic software that's going to solve it." So basically, they've already made the decision to invest in the software. They just want you to build the business case to tell them that it's a good idea, or perhaps they've already made a decision to invest in certain capital projects, and they just want to, get you to tick the boxes and make sure that everything looks good. That is not a strong business case. So this diagram illustrates the typical content or section headings for a good business case document. Now, that document could be 20 pages long or it could be 200 pages long, but the important point here is that you do fill in all of it. If you're doing a fairly high-level business case, you might be tempted to skip some of these questions. Don't do that. You do need to address all of these points, even if it's just at a fairly high level, or if it's a really in-depth business case, then you'd go into a lot of detail. So it really depends on how much time you have or how much is at stake with this business case. So do all of these steps in varying degrees of depth and model complexity. So the document, what's really important here with the document is that it needs to follow this format, but it's important that you do it from left to right, not from right to left. So you don't have the solution ready until you know what the value proposition is. So, and it's important that you get the stakeholders at the organization, so the steering committee or the sponsor of the project, to agree on the value proposition before you move on to the boxes over on the right hand side. That's quite important, that it must not be solution led, because many people think that a business case is a template to be completed, a color by numbers experience. And because I know that a lot of companies do have templates that they need to fill out, and you can do that by following this process. So it's important that you do it like this so that you don't have solutions looking for problems rather than the other way around. So this is a look at how the modelling fits into this structure. So the orange boxes below are basically the parts of the model and what you need to do in order to address this from a modelling perspective. Now, the company that I've been working with is called Capability Network, and they have very kindly given us quite a lot of documentation and structure and collateral that I think you'll find useful if you want to read a little bit more about that. And I'll put the reference down below so that you can download that documentation if you'd like to. So a business case model will contain data or modelling for each of these segments. So they could be separate spreadsheets. Generally not, though. We'd normally have a financial model that would cover all of these in its entirety. So you can see by this that the modeler needs to be involved right from the beginning. The modeler needs to get involved early so that he or she understands the strategy and the business challenge. What's important to note here is that the modelling is a lot more than just costing and scenario analysis. Of course, the scenario analysis is really important and a really big part of the financial modelling, and we'll certainly go through that a little bit more. But you do need to make sure that you are not just performing options analysis that are going to make your chosen option look really good. And I must admit, I have seen that done. So all other options are sometimes made up just to support the preferred option, and that is not a strong business case. So I'd like to take you through now a recent case study that I've been working on with the Capability Network, and this is for a governance agency here in Australia, for a state government tribunal, and they came to us saying that they had a large backlog of cases from COVID. The wait times were too long, and the urgent problem was to reduce the backlog of cases. And through a fairly extensive process, we identified that there was quite an opportunity to improve the service level, and modelling was involved at each of these levels, particularly when it came to the scenario analysis. And it was great as the modeler on this project to be involved from the beginning. And when you start a project like this, it's quite hard. You never really know, how long something is going to take. Some things you can, just do the analysis within a couple of days, and sometimes it takes weeks. In this case, the project stretched over a period of a couple of months. And what was great about this was just because I was involved in the beginning, we set the model up in such a way that it was able to support all of the multiple iterations, because when it came down to the end of it, it's really the modeler that's under pressure. And when you're working really long hours and having a model that you can pass between different members of the team and other people can understand exactly how the model's been built is really important. So just going back to this previous slide, I know you, as Excel or modelling people, you want to know, how do we quantify this? How do we actually put this into a model? So I thought I'd take you through some of the benefits and how we actually did that. So this is one of the models or structures that the Capability have made available on that. So they use what they call a benefits funnel to actually work through and quantify some of these benefits. So we love to sort of have these kind of models that we can work through. When you're modelling benefits, one of the things, and I know a lot of people may disagree with this, but it's really important when you're modelling benefits to work out exactly what is going to impact cash flow. We're going to talk about MPV in a minute, and the benefits that are going to impact the MPV have got to affect cash flow. For example, let's say you've got a team of 20 people, and your business case identifies that by undertaking the measures that you're going to actually get a 40% improvement in productivity. And so what some people will do will say, hey, we've saved 40% of those 20 people, and therefore the cost saving or the benefits in cash flow terms is going to be 8 FTE, full-time equivalent staff. In my opinion, that is not the case unless you're planning to make those people redundant. So unless someone is actually, you're going to stop paying those people, it's simply a notional gain or a notional benefit. So when you're modeling this kind of thing, it's important to delineate the difference between an actual financial cash flow benefit and a notional benefit. So I'll leave it there, and what we're going to jump into now is I know that you guys are keen to get into the technical skills, the technical part of the financial model that supports the business case. So I'd like to sort of jump through some of the Excel skills that we need. So the three measures of a project, of any project, of a business case, are typically going to be your NPV, your IRR, and your payback period. In order to calculate your NPV, you'll need to know what the discount rate is, what your cost of funds is, and so you may need to calculate the WACC in order to come up with the NPV. So if you do need to calculate the weighted average cost of capital, or the WACC, going back to finance studies, you may recall from university, this is how we calculate the WACC. Make sure you use the after-tax cost of debt and use market values for those. So once you've got those, you can then calculate your NPV. So let's jump into Excel now and have a look at how to do that. And I'll make this Excel file available at the link below as well. So this is how you would calculate your WACC. You know, you've got perhaps a company worth $10 million. It's made up of this much debt and this much equity. So you'd calculate your cost of debt and your cost of equity, take out the tax effect, and so then you can see that at a simplistic level it costs about $1 million to run a $10.4 million company. So that is going to be your weighted average cost of capital. If you needed to calculate it like that, quite often in a business case we are simply just given the discount rate to use, in which case you can just ask what it is so that it's the same for all of the opportunities. So once we've got our WACC, we can then calculate your NPV, and of course you can just do that by using your lovely NPV function. So Excel makes it really, really easy to do this, and if you've got your data set up like this in annual basis, you can see there that your NPV, your net present value, so this is if you were to invest this much money then in a year's time this much and get these benefits in the future years, the today's value of those funds, assuming that your money costs 9.78%, the funds that you have left over is $371,000. So that is what we would use to compare different projects. Let's have a look now at the IRR, or the internal rate of return, and that's pretty easy to do, and that means that if we were to invest this much upfront, on an annual basis on average it would return 13.3%. So you could use that as well, so either the NPV or the IRR, to make decisions about different projects. Now quite often we do it like this, so you've just got your the cash flow is on an annual basis. Sometimes though, if you know exactly when the funds are paid or received, they may not be on an annual basis. So you can use the X NPV and the X IRR. So I'll just link through the WACC again. So we could do the X NPV. So the rate is going to be 9.78%. The values are here and the corresponding dates. And you'll see that we get quite a different number, and it's important to remember that although technically that is also the NPV, it is the basis on which it's calculated. Even though we've used exactly the same cost of capital, what that does is it discounts it back to the 1st of July, whereas with this one here it assumes that the funds are paid or received at the end of the period, whereas with this it basically doesn't apply any discounting to that $2 million. So that's something important to note. And then you could do exactly the same thing here with the X IRR. So the values are here and the corresponding dates are like that. So again, same situation, just slightly different way of calculating it. So as I mentioned, the three methods are your NPV, your IRR, and your payback period. Unfortunately, there is not an Excel function yet to calculate your payback. So there's so many different ways of doing it. So I've got an example here that you might use. So, basically what the payback is telling us is if you've got an annual cash flow, how many years or how long does it take before we get our money back? So you can see there that that's the year at which we get our money back. If you wanted to calculate exactly the years and months, you could do a sort of brute force method like this where you're splitting it into years and months, but there's multiple ways of doing a payback calculation, but you can use that as part of your financial model to have how long does it take for us to get our money back. Okay, and one of the most important technical modelling skills, certainly as far as business cases go, are the scenario analysis. So I just wanted to show you an example from the new second edition of the Financial Modelling for Dummies book. So this is, and again, I'll make this file available. So this situation, you've got a bus company and they're losing customers, and we are showing here using scenario analysis, and of course there's an entire model behind it. You can see that they're losing customers, and over 24 months their profitability is going right down. And if you do nothing, you can see what's going to happen. Whereas if one of the options is to put an extra route or bus route on, and that's going to increase the profitability. So you can compare do nothing versus do something. So it's a way of visually showing the scenario analysis. So, moving on to the Excel scenario tools. So there's so many different ways, and Excel makes it very easy to build scenarios, but the way or the method that you use, it really depends on the type of model. So all of these are, in a lot of my courses we go through each of these. What I'm going to focus on today is the manual scenario selection and the data tables. So in my opinion, those two are probably the most useful method of scenario selection. So let's have a look at what manual scenario selection looks like, and then we'll compare it to data tables, and you can then decide which of those is going to be most appropriate in your business case model. So here you've got a model that's been built, very simple model, and you can see that the profit is $2 million at 14%, and this is under the base case. So if we were to manually change this, now this is done using a combo box, but of course you can use other manual, you can use a drop down, a data validation drop down, you could use tick boxes or radio buttons or simply numbers, just some kind of manual switch to physically switch between them to go best case, base case and worst case, so that you can see all of the numbers flowing through the model. And this is a really common method of scenario analysis. It's probably the most common way, certainly the easiest way to do it. Using actual manual, make it so that the user can manually flick between them. The reason people use it is that it's really easy to build, it's easy to understand, and you can have a whole lot of inputs and assumptions. But when you're doing the output of your business case, so when you're wanting to present or make decisions based on your business case, using manual scenario analysis is quite difficult because you can only look at one scenario at a time, and it makes it quite hard to compare scenarios side by side. So let's have a look now at the same example using a data table. So here we have it, the same model, and we're going to choose the profit margin as the output for our sensitivity analysis. So I'm just going to go into what if analysis and data table. So I then have to work out the row. So the row is the sale price. So that's that number there. And the column input cell is going to be the building cost. So that's that number there. Say okay. And that is going to give us all of the possible outcomes simultaneously in a single table. So that is I think perhaps a better method of scenario analysis. Because you can look at multiple outcomes simultaneously, so it's great for sensitivity analysis. It can be a little bit tricky for beginners, and I guess you can only show one or two variables and of course one output. So in this example, if you wanted to show the net profit, for example, you'd need to create another data table. But remember, with any kind of scenario analysis, that in the model there can only be one outcome. Whatever the outcome you have will be wrong, and that is the point of having scenario analysis for your business case, so that you know that that whatever the outcome is, it will not necessarily, this is not going to be what happened. You're just giving people different options so that they can make decisions with their business case. So the last thing I would like to cover with you today is presenting the business case. So this is really important, to leave enough time to show all of the work, all of the fantastic work you've done with your strategic analysis and the financial model to support that analysis. So make sure that you have allowed enough time to present that. I just wanted to show you one of the many visuals that we created. There were lots and lots of visuals. The project that we worked on for the state tribunal, this was one of the outcomes, because the FTE, or the staff movement, was a really important outcome. We prepared 4 different options, so each of those had very different FTE movement, and this visual was really well received by the board. They found it much easier to look at it like this, to compare the different options, because we knew that there was that a large number of staff were going to be retiring in a couple of years' time, and we needed to include that in the model so that we could see how many staff do we need to hire so that we can clear the COVID backlog, and we would be able to replace the attrition of the staff. So this is an example of a bridge chart, which is a great way of displaying this kind of visual as an output of a business case. And I've actually popped an example of this in the file as well, if you'd like to have a look at that. When you are presenting the outcome of the business case, or the visuals for the finalization of your business case, do not, whatever you do, embed a spreadsheet in your file, in your PowerPoint document. There is no faster way to lose people's interest than to dump a spreadsheet onto a PowerPoint, and certainly don't take them through the spreadsheet. You need to do the hard work for them and summarize those key points. So it would be much better if you were to show something like this. You've got your best case, base case, worst case, or your various options from your business case analysis, your MPV, your IRR, and your payback perhaps, and then the cash flow, or whatever those particular metrics are, and how they look visually compared to each other. And you can do that using a data table. So in conclusion, remember that a business case is not just a fill in the blank template, certainly not. It is the result of a highly structured strategic planning process involving those documents that have a strong financial model at the heart of it. You do need to have good technical modelling skills to be able to support the business case, so functions such as MPV, IRR, payback period, being able to build scenarios, so knowing how to do those manual drop downs, data tables, that sort of thing. You definitely need to have really good technical skills to be able to support the business case with a financial model. And lastly, you consider how you need to present that business case so that the stakeholders can understand exactly what the business case model is telling us. Remember that the business case is not strong without a strong financial model. So thank you so much, and you can download the accompanying files down below, or you can pop on to that website, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you.